time is the one resource we cannot get back. You can always go out and make more money. Again, life is too short. There's that cliche, the days are long, the years are short. And boy, the older you get, the more real that becomes.
Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up?
I guess I would end with,
in a world that's accelerating towards AI and automation, what sets us apart isn't speed or scale, it's creativity. Welcome to the Learn It All podcast, the show for today's leaders who want to get ahead and stay ahead because we believe great leaders aren't born or made, we're always in the making. I'm your host, Damon Lemby, two-time best-selling author and CEO of Learn It, a live learning platform that has helped upskill over 2 million people over the past 3 decades. On this episode of Learn It All podcast, I'm joined by MaryLou Kayser, who has spent the last 30 years as a coach, speaker, and thought leader around the power of creativity. Coming up, MaryLou will be sharing her thoughts on why creativity is not just for artists, how to build up your creativity through daily practices, how to practically step out of your comfort zone, and the Play Your Position framework that helps you improve your life. You believe that creativity can be the ultimate competitive advantage, especially in today's digital age. But what do you say to people who think they don't have a creative bone in their body?
Oh, that is such a common response. And I'll ask questions. I'll get curious. I'll say, well, why do you think that? I want to know, where did that come from? And over the years, I've discovered that a lot of it came from school. This idea that because they couldn't draw, or they weren't good at art class, or in an English class where there was creative writing element, they were comparing themselves. And so I'll dig a little deeper. I say, okay, well, what do you like to do in your free time? And so many people have hobbies, whether it's knitting or cooking or working in the garage. And I'll say, you're creative. And they're like, oh, I never really thought about it that way. So this idea that creativity is the ultimate advantage in a highly digital world, especially with artificial intelligence coming along and being able to generate things so fast, having something that is uniquely through you, your vision, and it doesn't matter if you're following a recipe or if you're sewing and you're using a pattern, there's still that sense of engaging with an idea through your hands, through your voice, people who sing, right, or perform. And even with digital tools, we can be creative in ways that sometimes I think people forget that is creativity.
And why do you believe creativity is such a critical tool these days?
Because it's what makes us human. In a world that feels sometimes like the human is being taken away from us because of machines, because of how digital everything has become, and certainly because of artificial intelligence. Holding on to what makes us uniquely human is essential. To remember that you always have a choice about what you make, how you respond to something that you see. Last December, I was at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, and museums are places that celebrate human creativity throughout the centuries. And that's what people sometimes affiliate with creativity. They're like, well, I'm not an artist. Yes, but are you a parent? You are being creative as a parent. You've got to come up with solutions. Creativity is about problem solving. It's about finding a solution sometimes on your feet. It's about improvisation. If you're on a phone call in a business meeting and somebody throws a question out of left field, your ability to think creatively on the spot is going to probably either advance or, sideline the conversation. We have to learn to trust that our brains are designed to solve problems, to see the world through our own unique experience. And that matters. That's valuable. Where there's a lot of cookie cutter stuff, where there's a lot of sameness, there's a lot of what I call the franchise, mentality, where anywhere I go in America, If I walk into a Starbucks, it's going to look like a Starbucks. And that's part of their creative edge. They don't want every Starbucks to look different. That's not part of their brand. My point is, if we all become the same because we give up our individual creativity, the spark that we bring to the world through everything from how we dress to the stories that we tell, all of it, I put under that umbrella of creativity.
I'm totally with you on that. Now, question I got is, you talk about learning to trust ourselves more when it comes to being creative. What advice do you have for individuals who need to increase that trust?
Something I do, I'll just use myself as an example. I practice what I call my holy hour every morning. And what that entails is when I first get up, I go downstairs, I heat the kettle of water, I make my cup of tea, I write in my journal with a pen on a blank sheet of paper for 20 minutes. And I just, whatever's on my mind, it could be, I had a very vivid dream and I'm recording it. It could be me wrestling with a question around my business. It could be me recalling what I did the day before or what I'm excited about coming up. It could be anything at all, but it's just the act of writing for 20 minutes. And then I'll do 20 minutes of some kind of movement. It could be yoga, might be just dancing around my kitchen. I put my headphones on, I put on my playlist. It could be walking on the treadmill. It could be walking outside when the weather's good and I can get out. And then the other 20 minutes is for getting my head right. I might read a section of a book. I might listen to a podcast. I make recordings of visions that I have for my work. You know, some people call it a manifestation, what I'm working towards becoming, and I'll listen to that. And I get up early enough where I can give myself that hour. And why that's so important is because it does reinforce the trust in myself, because I'm checking in with myself first. I'm not jumping on my phone and answering notifications. I'm not turning on the news and letting the outside world, interfere and steal some of that trust, because now I've been impacted by a weather forecast or something that a politician is doing or a natural disaster in the world. I mean, that protecting that sacred time first thing in the morning allows me to get through my day at a higher level of trust in myself than if I don't do it. And I've been in situations where maybe I'm traveling and it's harder to do that holy hour, right? I try, but and I do notice a difference because other things are coming at me and they take energy away from me saying, okay, I've got this. I think trusting ourselves is one of the most important things to put time into, and it's also one of the hardest, because people say, well, of course, it's not even a question we ask ourselves, is it? When was the last time you sat down and said, Damon, do you trust yourself on this? I mean, it's getting into practice of saying, I have to trust myself.
As a younger leader, I thought I had all the answers. I thought a lot of times that I was a know-it-all. And one of the things that I've got better at, I wrote a book about it, The Learn It All, is I've become more humble and curious and open to asking people questions. And maybe assuming that I'm not always right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that comes with maturity and with experience. I compare, when I think about who I was in my 20s, for example, when I first went into public education and I was teaching, and the level of trust in myself now to be able to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have all the answers. I'm not always right, is much greater now than it was in my 20s, when I felt like I had a lot to prove and I didn't want to look foolish in front of my students or my colleagues. And that can get us into trouble, because if we just keep barreling ahead in answering to, well, I have to be right. I can't look like I don't know what I'm doing, or that I, out of alignment, could actually end up backfiring worse than if you just stopped and said, you know what, guys, I don't know. I got to get back to you on this. I am absolutely stumped. And sometimes I've learned with an audience, if for anybody who's listening or watching who speaks to audiences, I've seen speakers get tripped up on this when either the audience isn't responding to them, or they said something that they realized, oops, I shouldn't have said that. And rather than stopping and saying, oh gosh, I just put my foot in my mouth, didn't I? And that makes everybody relax and say, yes, you did. And we still love you, right?
And you're authentic.
Because you're being real, right? Which comes back to the whole human thing. When we're able to trust ourselves enough to say, oh yeah, I just screwed up, people are going to respond so much more genuinely to us than if we try to make it seem like, wow, you caused this, and I've worked with people like that, where they wanted to blame everybody else for their own inadequacies instead of saying, oh man, I really screwed up, didn't I? And everybody goes, yeah, you did, and we still love you.
And I see more and more these days, that's who people want to work for. Those are the people want to follow. Genuine, real people. I had a wonderful guest on named Gary Ridge, the former CEO of WD-40. And he said the most powerful sentence he ever learned was, I don't know. And his new book is called Any Dumbass Can Do It. I mean, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, just be authentic, be yourself. People want to see you with your guard down than always trying to have, like, you have all the answers and everything. I think it's so important. How did you, and I've heard you talk about this a lot, where you've always been able to get yourself out of your comfort zone. You say you'll go right to the edge. And me and other people, it took a while to get there. What advice do you have for individuals who are maybe stuck too often in their comfort zone?
You just got to do it. I mean, that's the quick answer, is when you recognize that something is making you uncomfortable, or you're feeling that tension between you want to take a leap versus retreat back to what you've always known, I say take the leap. Now, as long as it's moral and ethical and safe, right? I'm not talking about literally jumping off of a cliff here, right? I want to make that very clear.
Putting your entire savings in an investment that maybe could go wrong.
Correct. I would say calculated risks. And I can say that now because I didn't always calculate the risk I was taking. And I have battle scars from that. However, the question you're asking is, for somebody who's listening or watching and thinking, I just can't ever seem to do anything that is outside my comfort zone. You might just start with something small. This may sound kind of strange, but one thing you can do is, instead of going to the grocery store you always go to the same grocery store, but in the next town over. Just take yourself out of your usual routine, or go to a different grocery store altogether. If you shop I used to shop at Fred Meyer outside of Portland, Oregon all the time. If you shop at Fred Meyer, go to Trader Joe's instead, right? If you're always going to the big box stores like BJ's or Costco, go to a small local grocery store. Anything to change up your routine just a little bit, where you're not going to see the same faces, you're not going to see your favorite checkout person, you're not going to maybe run into your neighbor. Another interesting, and it will probably sound very different, but trust me on this, it really works, is get some notebook paper or a blank journal, and for the next 30 days, spend 10 minutes writing with your non-dominant hand some kind of simple affirmation to yourself. Like, you deserve that new Ferrari or whatever it is, right? Like something that you want, something positive, and write it 10 times with your non-dominant hand, and then stop, and then the next day go back, and you can write the same mantra, or you can come up with another one. Do that for 30 days. What that's going to do for your brain, it is going to open your brain up in ways you will be amazed. You will look back, and just that act alone might give you enough courage and impetus to try something that you've been dancing around the edge a little bit. Because most people who are watching this or listening, they have something in mind that they're wanting to try or do, and they haven't yet. And so if you're not quite ready, and we never are, that's another fallacy. You're never ready. When everybody says, "Are you ready?" I'm like, don't even say that. No, I'm not. You're never ready. There is no such thing as being 100% ready. Ask any professional athlete, Olympian athlete, anybody who speaks for a living and gets on stage. You are never ready to go out there, and you do it anyway. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, it goes back to kind of like what Sir Richard Branson said, screw it, let's do it.
Yep.
Sometimes it's just saying yes and then having to figure it out, because once you've committed to it and you're not going to back out, you're just going to find a way to get it done. And like I heard you say, as long as it's not going to put you in danger or it's immoral or whatever, just saying yes, committing to it, and pushing yourself out of that comfort zone. Hey, at least give yourself a pat on the back for trying.
Right.
A lot of us don't. I think that's wonderful advice. And I'm going to try the left-handed thing. I'm a right-hander, and I'm really interested to see how that works.
The thing is sticking with it, remembering to add it into your day. But I remember when I was first exposed to that strategy, and you're going to laugh at how bad it looks, but that's not the point. It's not what your writing looks like. It's that you're doing it. And my advice is don't pick a long sentence, because pick something short, like 5 or 6 words, like you are amazing, something short, and just 10. Once you're done with 10, you're done. I'm just curious, Damon, in all the people you've interviewed over the years and the different stories you've had, are there certain categories of things that you've noticed people dance around going for but hold themselves back? I would say
a lot of the individuals that I've interviewed who are super successful, one of the main things, the traits that they say they have, is their ability to get out of their comfort zone, and try things. And then when they reflect back on, some of the things they wish they would have done differently, is they would have learned how to do that sooner, I guess, is what I'd say. That there's some regrets they had, whether it was an acquisition they didn't make or a girl they wanted to ask, whatever it is, right? Two of the things that I've seen is they learn to get comfortable with failure. And also, MaryLou, kind of like you mentioned earlier, they don't have the victim mentality. That they take accountability and ownership when things don't go right. So let's talk about something that that a lot of people are still uncomfortable with, that is, super critical these days, and it's AI and AI literacy. I was doing some of my research on you, and I like your metaphor around how you talk about how AI is like fire. So let's unpack that one a little bit.
Oh my gosh, yeah. AI, it's here, it's burning, and it is... fire is a powerful metaphor, especially with what's happened recently in this country. And I'm sensitive to that.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
And it's also reality. Fire is actually, if you've ever spent any time around forests or know people who like to spend time in forests, it is nature's way of actually growing the forest. It's nature's way of clearing out what is no longer necessary to bring in that new growth. And I do see AI as this thing that it's here. It is raising questions. It is causing people, you want to talk about uncomfortable, it is causing a lot of discomfort and
Absolutely.
A lot of fear. There's a lot of misinformation and misperceptions about AI. And hence why I have stepped forward and said, let me help you become more AI literate. My background is as an educator, and I worked with literature and writing in the classroom with students to help them become better critical thinkers, better writers, better readers, better humans, right? That's always the goal of education. And because it's burning, it feels like it's burning out of control right now, there's that natural response of we either have to put this fire out completely and stop it before it destroys everything, which I think you and I would agree is a misperception. It's not going to destroy everything. But at the same time, we do need to learn how to work with it. And if you're not careful, what happens with fire? You get burned. Or something that seems small at first rages suddenly out of control, and it's bigger than you realized. And so again, as an educator, somebody who loves guiding people through that transformation, whether it's around what the themes are in The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, or it's, okay, you have these AI tools, you have these AI programs, what can we do with this? It's fundamentally, it's the same principle. It's getting out of your comfort zone, being willing to try. And if you find the right people to work with that will help you, you will probably not get burned. And you will probably begin to see how, oh, wow, this is incredible. I can now use this for myself. And again, the fire metaphor, what do we use fire for? We use it to cook, right? To nourish our bodies. We use it for heat. We use it for light. These are good things.
You've written 6 or 7 books. You're a writer, you write poetry. There are a lot of professionals out there, especially writers, who are super resistant to AI because they look at it like it's going to water down my voice. Is it cheating? What do you say to them? And especially since talking off camera, you got a new book coming out and you leverage AI for it. So let's talk a little bit about that.
I was one of those writers. When ChatGPT first hit the scene in November of 2022, my immediate response was, oh no, uh-oh, we will no longer be needed, because I saw immediately, I was like, oh my gosh, look what this can do. But then, because of my adventurous spirit, I thought, all right, let's take a step back here. Let's, hold the phone, right? And I started experimenting, and I thought, all right, this is not as threatening as my initial response was to it. I would again say to people, especially writers, is again, going back to trust yourself. You have a unique voice. You have a unique way of putting words together to express ideas. And that way will become even more valuable given the sheer volume of garbage that people are generating with AI who are not writers and don't understand that you can't have your sentences have the same rhythm over and over again, and that there's certain phrases that are clear indicators that somebody just put a prompt in, lifted it, and put it out there. So again, it comes down to stepping into one of the names of my books is the far and lit unknown. You've got to be willing to step into that far and lit unknown and give it a try. And if it's through a course where it feels a little bit safer and there's some guardrails around it, that's great. Do it that. If you just want to pull up the tool yourself, I mean, they're all out there: Claude, Gemini, Copilot, ChatGPT. And do a comparison. Take something that you wrote 5 years ago or 10 years ago or even last year, right? On your own, just you and the keyboard or you and your journal. And then come up with a prompt that, if you take yourself back into school where your teacher gave you assignments and said, okay, we want you to write a compare and contrast essay about the themes in The Great Gatsby or whatever. Come up with a prompt that would generate a piece that's like what you wrote all on your own, and then compare the two. It's fascinating. I've done that a few times. And what ChatGPT comes out, and that's my favorite tool, by the way. I know I talk about that a lot. I like ChatGPT the best, and I've had philosophical conversations with people who prefer others, and that's fine. It's really, it doesn't matter what you choose. What really matters is get in there, mess around with it. It is not human. All it can respond to is what you tell it. And it is all about predicting patterns, and it is all about what already exists. And that's where the creativity and the human creativity comes back in, bringing this full circle, is right now, and AI cannot invent on its own. It requires you as a human to guide it. And so, is it cheating? I thought that too. It's not, when you know how to use it right. Is it cheating if you give it a prompt and then lifts the whole thing and then paste it and say, I wrote this? Yes. I think that's not, first of all, why would you do that? Why would you want your name on something like that? You want your name on what you did. But if you learn how to use it as a strategic thought partner, you learn how to tell it how to work with your ideas, with your content. That's the power.
Trusting it fully on its own, just throwing something in there and then sending it out to the world, that may save you time, but it's going to be awful. And as we go on and on and on, it's easy to go on LinkedIn and Instagram and immediately see an inauthentic post where somebody has just got emojis and the same sentence structure all the time. And I think you'll agree with this. It's not necessarily, in some cases, a time saver and a shortcut, right? Because you got to actually use your thought process to work alongside of it.
You do. So in writing this book that I've currently written, and I'm working with a human editor because I believe in that. But as I was working with ChatGPT on clarifying ideas and helping me, I have a tendency to write really long sentences. And so what it's good for is telling it, I need this sentence not to be so long. And it's a time saver. Could I do that on my own? Of course I could. But for argument's sake, what the process of working with ChatGPT to write my book, which is all my words, it's all my ideas. I didn't tell it to write the book for me. I used it as my assistant, my brainstorming partner when I got stuck. I know something that you're a big advocate for, Damon, is when you were on my podcast, you talked about this, is make your AI your 11th team member if you have 10 people on your team. And let me tell you, I'm a solopreneur. I don't have a team. I have a podcast editor and producer who I outsource. I outsource my editor. I've worked with her for years on my own book projects and clients when I was helping clients write books. What the AI has allowed me to do is I have been able to build a team that I can go to because I figured out how to prompt it, and I get feedback. Now, here's the key, and you just said it. I have to look at that feedback and put it through my critical thinking lens. I don't just take it at face value. I have to ask myself, is this accurate? Is this true? Do I really want to follow this advice? But that's, again, the power of the human and the machine. A quick story. My nephew is a sophomore in college. He knows his aunt is a former English teacher and can help with essays. And so when he was home for the winter break, he was applying for an internship. And he had to write an essay. So he called me up and he said, hey, can you help me do that? I really really value you. So he came over here, and this was our process. He had the questions that he needed to answer in the essay. So I turned on my phone voice memo app and I interviewed him and we recorded it. And he told me his answers to the questions in his words. Then I took that file, I sent it to my AI transcription service. Within 2 minutes, I had the transcript back. He and I sat down at the computer and looked at it in a Google Doc. I copied it, pasted it into a Google Doc. We looked at it and said, okay, is this is the content you want to say? And we made some adjustments. And then I said, all right, now what are we going to do? He said, we're going to put it into ChatGPT. I said, yes, we are. So we took that raw draft that was his, asked the chat to please make this flow. Do not change the content. Do not change the voice. Do not change, none of that. Boom, done. I said, do you want to read it or do you want me to read it to you so you can hear it? He says, I want you to read it to me so I can hear it. When I read it to him, his face, he could not believe it. His parents could not believe it, but it was him. It was his voice. It was his stories. It was his words. The chat didn't write it. All it did was clean it up. That's not cheating.
What if somebody struggles with knowing the right types of questions to ask it?
Yes. Well, that's where someone like myself, someone like people you've interviewed on your show, Damon, come into play. You find the people who can teach you. We're out here. I was telling you in the pre-chat, I am so excited about teaching people how to use these tools. It's not about the glitz and glam about, I see these on YouTube ads all the time, is that push button publishing where you just give it a sentence and it writes a book for you in 5 minutes or whatever. It's not that. It's you amplifying your genius, your edge, your magic, and shaving enormous amounts of time off the process, and also being able to see things you didn't consider. That was something that came out of that with my nephew, is there were a couple of things that when he heard it back, he said, wow, I said that? And I said, yes, you did. Let's go back, look at the transcript. It can mirror back to you the way you think, but you have to learn how to talk to it properly. It isn't just what most people think it is, like, please help me write a better email.
And MaryLou, that's where I give you a little pushback, is how you refer to it as a tool. To me, Excel is a tool. I think that we need to have the mind shift that AI, ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, is again what you were saying. It's a thought partner. It sits next to you. So it's not like a hammer and a nail where you're just gonna the hammer's gonna hammer it in, right? It's like it can't really think for itself. You have to provide it the context and the information and keep working through it if you want to get the end results that you need.
Thank you for calling me out on that, because I'm working on changing my vocabulary, because the way it has been presented is it's a tool. And what you and I and other people are beginning to do is elevate its status. Now, again, it is not a human. I've had those conversations with people who laugh. In fact, I tell a story in my book about a couple of people in one of my mastermind groups. We were talking about using AI for writing, and there were 3 of us talking about it. One of them is a programmer. He builds bespoke, IT programs for companies, and has been in that world for a long time. And then my other friend and I, we're more of the creative. My friend is a French teacher, and I'm a writer and a creative and all this stuff. And the French teacher and I are really excited about these, like, he likes Claude, I like ChatGPT. Our other friend said, he starts laughing. He's like, guys, you realize that it's not a human. It doesn't have emotions. And we're like, well, yes, it does. So again, you can start to begin thinking of it as a real person and have to remind yourself it's not.
It's not. But I have to say, everything I look at now, and I got this from a mutual friend that you and I have that we've both interviewed, Jeff Woods, is I look at everything like not anymore like, how can I do this better? How can I do this better leveraging AI and think about things that way, both personally and professionally. Um, Now, one of the things we've also talked about offline, which I think is really important, is personal agency when it comes to not just AI, but all these tools in general. So, what are your thoughts on that?
How much time do we have? If I get on a soapbox, this is the soapbox I get on. I am a huge, huge proponent of you must always protect your personal agency, your ability to choose. We are living in a time when personal agency is being, in some cases, overtly taken away from us, but more covertly. It's a slow build. It's a slow burn. Part of my book is exploring my own experience where I woke up one day and asked myself this question. I said, MaryLou, when did you stop noticing what you were giving away? That brings tears to my eyes because I look back over I've been in the online space. I jumped in. Again, I'm a fast action taker. I saw what it could do. I wanted to learn. I messed around. I made a lot of mistakes. But I'm a dreamer and I'm a believer, and I saw the potential and I saw what it was able to do. And when I look back over the last 17 years, have I had a great life? In many ways, absolutely. Have I given away a lot of my time to something that gave me nothing back? Absolutely. That's the personal agency. Each person owes it to themselves to fairly regularly check in and say, how much in control of my time and my day and my life am I really? How much am I responding to the notifications on my phone? The whole Pavlov's dog of the modern world, where stuff is coming at us all the time, to the point where I hear people, the battle cry now is, I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know what to do, I work so hard, I have no time for this, that, or the other thing. And that's, to me, that's the signal that, okay, time to take a hard stop and check in with yourself and say, what are you giving away and what do you need to take back? And that's personal agency.
If you're comfortable with sharing, when you ask yourself that question, what is an example of something that you gave away?
My marriage. Yeah. I tell the story about that in the book, and
in your new book or your
no, the new book.
Okay.
The book that's coming out. That's one of the stories I tell. I also gave away time with my children that I can't ever get back. Now, I was fully present. Well, nobody's fully present. I was highly present for my children when I had them, because after my divorce, their dad and I shared time. We co-parented really well, but we were living in separate houses, and I didn't have my kids all the time. And I also, my daughter would come in and I'd be on my computer and she'd say, Mom, get off the computer. Honey, I'll be right there. I just got to finish this thing.
Yeah.
What was I finishing? What was I doing? I don't have any memory of that. And so there's a lot of little stories about big things and little things that, again, time is the one resource we cannot get back. You can always go out and make more money. You can always go out and make more money. You cannot get your children's childhood back. You cannot get a relationship back. And I'm not saying that some relationships don't need to end, okay? Not saying that at all. I'm saying that was one of my big wake-up calls.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable enough to share it. And I'll give you an example. And I try to do my best to be present. But I got to tell you, the other day, my 3-year-old said, Daddy, put your phone away. I'm talking to you. That really puts things in perspective as well, right? Yeah. Well, you and I met as we switch gears a little bit here. You got an awesome podcast called Play Your Position. What does that mean to you, play your position?
It means showing up fully who you are, wherever you are, and literally playing full out. Don't leave anything behind. It's, again, life is too short. There's that cliche, the days are long, the years are short. And boy, the older you get, the more real that becomes. And I'm also a huge sports fan. College football would probably be my favorite. You and I were talking about that as we're both sports fans. I mean, I know you love baseball. I love baseball too, and we're in spring training right now. And play your position, I think, does come from the sporting world. And when you watch a team that is clicking, each person on that team is playing his or her position in a way that allows the unit to accomplish a goal. And kind of on a macro level, I feel we each have a responsibility to play our positions so that we are moving the world forward in a positive direction, knowing that there's forces that we can't control and there's things that are going to happen that really suck. And if you can, again, coming back to personal agency and creativity and all the things that I love and believe in, recognize that not everything is going to work out. And sometimes you're going to drop the ball. Sometimes you're going to strike out in the bottom of the ninth with 3 men on and 2 outs, and you only needed to drive one guy home to win, right? I mean, what was that show? I don't know if you remember growing up, the wide world of sports, where it was
totally.
The agony of defeat.
Yeah.
It was like the extremes. And I feel like, when you can own your life and say, I am who I am, and it's okay that I can't do everything, that I don't know everything, that I can't play every position, but I can play my position really well, and that is worth something. And so at the foundation of my show, that's what people are talking about, even though the questions have to do with answering the call to leadership and how did you get to do what you're doing now, and tell me a story about a time when you did fumble the ball and you didn't win the game, all that stuff.
You've been doing your podcast for over 11 years now.
I have.
Before everybody has podcasts these days.
Yes.
Right? So how would you say that over the 11 years that hosting your podcast, leading your podcast has helped you mature or grow personally or professionally?
That this life is not about me. I'm just passing through. That there are people who are so much farther ahead in life. I'm not talking about age. I'm talking about just knowledge, wisdom.
Which is okay, by the way. I just want to
absolutely
add that.
is.
It's okay for that, for our listeners out there to see and understand that.
It absolutely is. That humility and being able to receive the wisdom from others has humbled me, has helped me really get serious about my personal growth, making a commitment to that, not just giving it airplay, but truly diving in and studying the great thinkers over the millennia. It's helped me improve. I've prided myself most of my life as being a good listener, but being a podcaster, I've definitely improved my listening skills, my ability to improvise, another skill that I've had for many, many years, because when you are standing in front of a room of 30 students who are looking at you and expecting something, you learn to improvise really fast, that your agenda sometimes needs to get thrown out the window. And that's happened on my show, where, especially early on when I followed more of a formula, I had a set of questions, I realized, when you and I were talking, Damon, I remember there were things that you would say, and I thought, wow, I got to go there. And instead of being locked into, well, this is my agenda.
So what I hear you saying is it made you a better listener. I couldn't agree more with that, both personally and professionally. And it is out of your comfort zone. I actually was pretty nervous before coming on. I even told you, right? Because I mean, you're a pro at this. So get you out of your comfort zone, makes you a better listener. You get to learn people's stories of what they've done. And like you said, several of them are ahead. And it also kind of leads you into our final thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is really thinking about what you want to get out of life and what your legacy is. And I know you do a lot of work on that. Let's talk a little bit about how you really define what legacy should look like.
Yeah, no big questions here. Oh, man. Oh, legacy. Well, those two amazing humans that I, brought into this world and was so fortunate enough to be a part of their life and seeing how they are functioning in the world and bringing goodness to the world is, I can't imagine a greater legacy. Again, on a meta level, I would say I would want people to in remembering me, that she was willing to take the risks. She was willing to try the thing. She cared deeply about people and wanted to make this world just a little bit better.
Thanks for sharing that, because it's something that you brought up before we came on the air was, one of your goals, one of all our goals is to help people really think about, what do we want to get out of this life? And as somebody who's over 50 myself, you start thinking about that more and looking at your family. And I look at the people I have at Learn It and the work we do for our customers. And, I hope that one of my things I leave as a legacy is that contribute to building better leaders for the future, because we need that. I think you'd agree with that.
100%. We do. Leaders who do all the things we've talked about today, exhibit authenticity, creativity, the ability to improvise, the ability to listen, to care, to say, I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but we can figure this out together. Let's do that.
Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up?
I guess I would end with, you do matter, no matter what you're doing right now, no matter where you're headed, that who you are right now is important to at least one other person besides yourself. And life can feel difficult. And there's always a different way of looking at it. What you're doing here, Damon, on the Learn It podcast and with your company and with the people that you work with is exactly what the world needs more of, is just step into your greatness just a little bit more, whatever that looks like for you, and trust that it's going to make a difference.
Thank you, MaryLou. We did talk about a lot today. We talked about creativity, that it doesn't have to be natural. It could be a learned skill. And it also can be a big advantage in this digital age if you leverage it and you get better at it. I love how you dove into AI, especially since our first conversation. And we talked about AI literacy and how the right way to go about using AI and the wrong way, really. The importance of learning how to get out of your comfort zone and when you should get out of your comfort zone, and maybe when you should look before you jump into things as well. And then, of course, what you learned over the years in your podcast and so many vulnerable, wonderful things you shared that was huge for our audience. You got a new book coming out, maybe August, maybe October. We talked about that a little bit. And where else can our audience connect with you at?
So my hub online is my website, which is MaryLouKayser.com, MaryLouKayser.com. And you'll be able to, there's links to the show, the podcast. You can learn more about my books. You can buy the books. You can see what I'm up to. I've got just some exciting things around how we can have more personal agency in a digital world where it can sometimes feel like you're not controlling your choices. So thank you for that, Damon.
No, thank you. And so listeners and those of you watching on YouTube, what I'd like you to do is think about somebody or a bunch of people who could get value out of this conversation, whether it's somebody who's just being resistant to AI and they want nothing to do with it, send that to them. Whether it's somebody who's frustrated and thinks that, I'm not a creative person, I just know how to do things a certain way, send this episode to them. And if you know somebody out there who maybe is struggling to believe in themselves, I think they can get a lot of value out of this as well. So those are your tasks, listeners out there. And as always, until next time, stay curious, keep learning. Have a great day. Thank you, everybody.
We help companies sell better. Okay, that's why they engage us, or they want to add discipline to their go-to-market, or they actually want to win in their market by how